Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a truly unique source, Benjamin Hoff's classic, The Tao of Pooh.
Yeah, this isn't just, a cute book about Winnie the Pooh. It's actually a pretty brilliant way to understand the ancient philosophy of Taoism.
It really is. It uses the characters and stories from the 100-Acre Wood things most of us know, right, to explain these deep philosophical principles and vice versa, actually.
It's such a clever premise, taking these characters we think are simple, like Pooh, or grumpy like Eeyore, or bouncy like Tigger,
and showing how they either, embody or kind of stand against these fundamental ideas from Taoism.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to really pull out the most important insights from the excerpts of Hoff's book that we have.
Right. To understand what makes this mix of ancient wisdom and beloved children's stories so insightful and why it still resonates,
Okay, so let's unpack this. Hoff starts us off with a really helpful analogy, the vinegar tasters. It's a simple image, but it sets up three big Eastern philosophies quite well.
It does. So you picture three old masters, right? And they're tasting from this vat of vinegar, which represents life, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
The first one is Confucius, or Confucius. He tastes it and says, sour.
Sour. So not great.
Yeah, from his point of view, life was kind of out of whack. It wasn't aligned with the traditions of the past. It felt degenerate. So his solution was strict rules, rituals, reverence for ancestors, basically. A system to put things back in order. It's all about external correction.
Almost like saying, life's kind of messed up, and here's this really detailed manual on how we need to fix it.
Exactly. Then the second taster is Buddha. He tries the vinegar and finds it bitter.
Bitter. Even worse than sour, maybe.
Well, different. For Buddha, life itself, this earthly existence, is fundamentally suffering. It's caused by our desires, our attachments. So the path to peace isn't fixing the world, but transcending it. Getting beyond this world of dust to reach nirvana.
So life isn't just broken, it's inherently painful. And the answer is essentially to, leave it behind.
Pretty much. But then the third taster in the story is Lao Tzu, the figure associated with founding Taoism. He tastes the vinegar, and he smiles.
He smiles. He finds it sweet.
He does. And this is the core Taoist view Hoff explores. Harmony isn't something lost that we need complex rules to restore, like Confucius thought. And life isn't something inherently painful we need to escape, like Buddha taught.
Okay.
The Taoist perspective is that harmony actually exists naturally right now between heaven and earth. It's governed by these inherent universal laws.
So where does the sourness or bitterness come from then?
That comes from us. When people interfere. When we try to force things, impose our own arbitrary rules, get too clever or complicate the simple, natural flow, that's when life starts to feel sour or bitter.
So the key is more about aligning with that natural flow, appreciating things as they are, rather than trying to constantly fight or control them with, complicated systems or rigid beliefs.
Exactly. It's about appreciating, learning from, and really working with everyday life with what's already here. And Hoff suggests that when you do that, the natural outcome is, happiness, serenity, and that kind of subtle sense of humor Lao Tzu found in the vinegar.
And this is where our friend Pooh comes in, right? He's sort of the perfect example of this.
He absolutely is. Hoff introduces this really fundamental Taoist principle called Pooh. It's pronounced just like Pooh, interestingly enough, minus the long do sound. And it translates as the uncarved block. It represents things in their natural, original state, their simple beauty, their inherent function, like a block of wood before you start carving it into something specific.
And this applies not just to wood, but to people or bears.
Exactly, especially to living beings. And Hoff presents Winnie the Pooh, the bear of very little brain, as the absolute epitome of the uncarved block.
Now, Hoff is careful here, right? Simple-minded doesn't mean stupid.
Not at all. It's about being in that natural state of simplicity. Not overly complicated, not messed with by too much cleverness or too many imposed ideas. It's that still, calm, reflecting mirror mind, the Taoists value. It's the state before the carving starts.
Okay, and the other characters, they kind of show us the opposite of the uncarved block.
They do, perfectly. Yeah. You've got Rabbit. He represents knowledge for the sake of being clever. He knows lots of facts, procedures, the right way things should be done.
Right, like when he gets lost in the mist with Pooh and Piglet.
Exactly. All his clever plans and logical deduction that just lead them round in circles back to the same sandpit. He's trying to think his way out using complicated methods.
While Pooh,
the uncarved block, he listens. He hears the honeypods calling him from his house. His simple, direct connection to his needs, his intuition, It works where Rabbit's complex cleverness completely fails.
Then there's Owl.
Ugh. Owl, he's knowledge for the sake of appearing wise. Lots of big words, pontificating, presenting himself as the expert. But often there's not much substance behind it. It's knowledge as a performance.
And poor Eeyore. What's his knowledge for?
Knowledge for the sake of complaining about something. He seems to use whatever understanding he has to just reinforce his own gloomy outlook. Nobody minds, nobody cares. That kind of perspective really shuts down any possibility of positive action.
So Pooh's simplicity, his uncarved blockness, gives him something different.
Right. Hoff calls it useful wisdom, the kind you can actually use day to day. The what is there to eat variety, as he puts it, wisdom you can get at. Pooh isn't trying to analyze or describe the uncarved block. He just is it. He lives it.
So the big takeaway from Pooh, the uncarved block, is what? Drop the complexity.
Pretty much. Discard the arrogance, the overthinking, the unnecessary layers we add. And when you do that, you discover something simple but profound. Life is fun.
Life is fun.
Yeah. Being in that simple, natural state lets you enjoy things as they are. You act spontaneously, and often things just work out. Like Piglet notices, Pooh hasn't much brain, but he never comes to any harm. He does silly things and they turn out right.
It's a good reminder that sometimes, maybe often, the simplest path is the most effective one.
Which leads us right into the book's critique of, excessive intellect. Owl is kind of the poster child for this.
The Confucianist, desiccated scholar, Hoff calls it.
Yeah, someone who collects knowledge like it's, rare butterflies. They pin it down, keep it in dusty boxes, maybe write incomprehensible papers about it, but it's not alive. It's not connected to real experience.
This ties back to the vinegar tasters again, doesn't it? The Confucian scholar, busy with facts and rules.
Versus the Taoist, finding wisdom directly in the world. Now, Tzi's line really hits it. The wise are not learned. The learned are not wise. And that story about Owl trying to spell Tuesday, it's perfect. He gets tangled up in abstract logic. It's the second day, so it must be spelled with a 2. It's completely impractical and just confuses everyone.
While Piglet just says,
it's today. Simple, direct, experiential knowledge. That's the useful stuff in that moment.
So knowledge and experience really are like different languages. Hoff suggests the scholars need to, go outside and sniff around.
Yeah, basically get out of their heads and engage with the world directly. It reminds me of what Pooh says about animals. Lots of people talk to animals. Not very many listen, though. That's the problem.
You can know all the facts about something, but if you're not listening to its actual nature, its reality, what good is it?
And that Hanshan poem Hoff includes is pretty stark, comparing a scholar's learned descriptions of the sun to a blind man trying to describe it. Without the direct experience, the knowledge is inherently limited, maybe even misleading.
It leads to that Confucianist state of mind. Pooh describes in his little rhyme what is which and which is what, just tangled up.
And worse, this kind of abstract, disconnected knowledge can actually cause harm. The scholar might blame ignorance, which is really just the simple, natural state, the uncarved block for problems that their own limited theories or neglect of reality created.
Like building a house in the windiest spot because the theory looked good on paper, then blaming the wind when it causes trouble.
Exactly. Or look at Eeyore's view of A, representing formal learning education. He sees it as something only the special educated people have, not for ordinary folk like Poohs and Piglets.
Which is ironic because someone like Rabbit has that formal knowledge. He knows what A is.
But he completely misses the deeper, simpler wisdom that Pooh, the uncarved block, just naturally embodies.
But then Piglet has that little thought, doesn't he? I know something that Rabbit doesn't know.
He does, and that kind of sets up the next big concept perfectly, which is the Coddleston Pie principle.
Ah, Coddleston Pie. Named after another one of Pooh's little songs, right? What does this one represent?
This one is all about inner nature, understanding yourself and the world based on inherent qualities.
Okay, let's break down the song. The first line, a fly can't bird, but a bird can fly.
This illustrates things are as they are. It's about respecting the basic reality of what something is, its fundamental nature and function. You don't try to force a fly to be a bird. You don't try to fit square pegs into round holes. You work with what's actually there.
Like that Chuanxi story about the big crooked tree.
Exactly. Useless if you try to force it into being straight lumber for a building that ignores its nature, but incredibly valuable as it is for its shade, its character, its unique form. Everything has its own place and function, and that's true for people too.
And knowing your own inner nature helps you figure out where you fit. and where you maybe don't.
Definitely. Think of the other Chuangzi story, the tortoise. Would you rather be dead, enshrined in gold in a palace, or alive and happy dragging your tail in the mud?
Well, it depends on your inner nature, I guess.
Precisely. The tortoise preferred the mud. Pooh and Piglet might too. Owl probably wouldn't. What's right for one isn't right for another based on their essential nature.
Okay, next line. A fish can't whistle, and neither can I. What's this about?
This is about recognizing and knowing your limitations. The wise person understands what they can't do or what isn't natural for them. The foolish person ignores their limitations, often leading to trouble.
It's not about giving up, but about acknowledging reality, what's there.
Right. You have to know what you're working with. If you have a weakness, pretending it doesn't exist isn't helpful. Acknowledging it is the first step towards either strengthening it, working around it, or even using it.
And Tigger is the prime example of ignoring limitations.
Oh, absolutely. Tigers can do everything. Remember him trying to climb the tree and then realizing tigers don't climb down so well? Or trying to bounce like a jaguar. He learns his limitations the hard way.
But acknowledging limitations can be beneficial. That Chinese medicine saying.
Yeah. One disease, long life. No disease, short life. Being aware of a weakness, a disease, can make you more careful, more mindful, leading to better self-care and potentially a longer, healthier life. Ignorance isn't always bliss.
And sometimes, what seems like a limitation can actually be a strength in the right situation.
Perfect example. Piglet escaping Owl's collapsed house through the tiny letter slot. His smallness, often seen as a vulnerability, was his key advantage at that moment. He knew his limitation, small size, and it became his strength.
Okay, last line. Why does a chicken? I don't know why.
This suggests we don't always need the fancy, abstract, intellectual explanation for why things are the way they are. We might label something instinct, but often that just means we don't really know the deep reason.
So the important thing isn't the why, but recognizing the what, the inner nature itself.
Exactly. Recognize inner nature, understand things are as they are, and then work with that reality. You don't need a PhD in chicken psychology to know a chicken is a chicken.
And trying to impose your own nature onto something else is where things go wrong. Like the heffalump trap.
Classic. Pooh assumes a heffalump must love honey because he loved money, so he baits the trap with it. And who does he catch?
Himself, of course.
Right. You have to understand the heffalump's nature, not project your own onto it.
So Coddleston pie is really just another way of saying inner nature, or things are as they are.
That's the core of it. And the book argues that while our brains can be fooled, our inner nature can't be. True self-reliance comes from knowing who you are, what your nature is, and what works best for you. It goes back to Pooh's song. How can you get very far if you don't know who you are?
And this applies to negative traits too. You don't just suppress them?
Not necessarily. The idea is to understand them and maybe redirect them, use them positively. Like the story of Luann, the reformed housebreaker whose skills became invaluable in defending the city during wartime. Turn a minus into a plus.
Like Tigger's bounce. It causes trouble sometimes.
Like knocking Eeyore into the river. But you don't try to unbounce Tigger, because that same unstoppable energy is what helps him navigate the woods without getting lost. When Rabbit's clever plan to lose, Tigger backfired and got Rabbit lost, who saved the day. Tigger's unbounciness.
It's like realizing you're not an ugly duckling after all, but a swan. Recognizing your own unique something special.
Precisely. The wise aren't trying to be something else, they're simply who they are.
Okay, so this naturally flows into the next major concept, which is Wu Wei. Hoff calls it the Pooh Way.
Yes, Wu Wei is central. It's basically Taoism in action. It's how you operate based on understanding Pooh and inner nature.
Wu Wei, literally without doing or without making.
Right.
But that sounds passive.
It can sound that way, but the practical meaning is more like without meddlesome, combative, or egotistical effort. Hoff points out the characters for Wei even suggest a kind of clawing hand or a monkey. So Wu Wei is about not doing that. No forcing, no going against the grain, no clever tampering, no monkeying around with the natural order of things.
So it's effective because it's efficient. It follows the natural flow.
Exactly. Think of water flowing downhill. It doesn't strain or fight. It finds the easiest path, follows the contours of the land, it gets where it's going with minimal effort. That's Wu Wei. It's not a forced mechanical process.
Like that Chuangzi story of the old man in the waterfall.
Perfect example. He survives because he doesn't fight the water's power. He works with it, letting it carry him. He goes up with the swirl and down with the eddy.
And Pooh just lives this way, doesn't he? Without trying.
He does. He'll say things like, oh, I don't do much of anything. They just sort of happen. It really echoes that line from the Tao Te Ching. Tao does not do, but nothing is not done.
Meaning things get accomplished, but not through forceful striving.
Right. It means letting things work according to their own nature, allowing results to arise spontaneously. It's do without doing, which leads to what the Taoists call zuyuan, or self-so things happening by themselves naturally.
The Pooh Sticks game seems like a perfect illustration here.
It really is. You have Rabbit trying to analyze the current, predict the winner, maybe even trying to strategize how to drop his stick. He's trying to control the outcome.
And Pooh
just drops his pine cone. Simple action, align with the river's flow. And then, Eeyore falls in. Seems like an accident caused by Tigger. But it's all part of this unpredictable, natural unfolding that leads to the rescue. Rabbit's cleverness might try to take credit later, but it was Pooh's simple wu-wei action that set things in motion correctly.
So, with wu-wei, you're working with the nature of things. The round peg goes into the round hole easily. No stress, no struggle.
Exactly. It's the opposite of egotistical desire trying to force the square peg. It's different from cleverness devising tricks to make it fit. And it's different from analytical knowledge trying to figure out the physics of why pegs fit. Wu-wei, well, it just does it, and things get done.
Like opening that sticky honey jar.
Another great one. Piglet struggles mightily. Tigger uses brute force and breaks it. Pooh. He just works with the jar's nature. A gentle twist, maybe using his breath to warm it slightly. Effortless. Trying too hard creates tension and confusion. Thinking too much just gets you.
Well, confused.
And the book suggests that living this way leads to fewer actual accidents, because you're more aware. Yeah, because you become sensitive to circumstances. You're listening more, paying attention to the subtle cues, to your intuition. You're flowing with what's happening. And when you do that, decisions often feel less like agonizing choices and more like they just make themselves.
Like Pooh deciding who to visit.
Yeah.
No pros and cons list.
Nope. He just sits on a rock, maybe hums a little tune, lets his mind clear, and somehow he ends up going to the place he needed to be. No stressful decision-making process.
This idea of effortless action yielding to overcome force even shows up in things like Kai Chi Chuan, right?
Absolutely. It's a core principle in many internal martial arts, using softness and alignment to neutralize or redirect a greater force. That's wu-wei in a physical form.
Okay, so if wu-wei is the Pooh-wei, what's the opposite?
The opposite is the busy backsin.
The busy backsin. I think we all know a few of those. Or maybe are one sometimes.
Right. It's the person who is constantly rushing, always busy, 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 but seems to run around all day without getting anywhere meaningful.
They're always convinced the real prize, the important thing, is somewhere always farther along. Never here now.
Exactly. Hoff says that someone who's genuinely healthy and content just observes the Bessie Backsin's frantic energy and, well, does the opposite.
What drives the Backsin?
It's this restless, nervous energy, always chasing some goal that seems just out of reach, like Pooh's nightmare, where the honey jar keeps moving away right when he's about to grab it. The book says those folks who are always chasing that distant reward, they tend to burn their toast a lot. Simple things go wrong because their focus is elsewhere.
Rabbit seems like he has busy Backsin tendencies.
He definitely does. Always rushing off based on some half-baked idea or flawed process of elimination, often completely missing the simple reality right in front of him, like Pooh being the uncarved block. His busyness rarely leads to actual wisdom or effective results.
Hoff even traces this mindset back historically.
Yeah, he suggests it might have roots in a certain Western cultural pattern, being rootless, dissatisfied, thinking of the Puritans relentlessly working, or the pioneers always pushing westward, never quite content where they are. This can contribute to the Backsin being rigid, maybe combative, and often too hard on themselves and everyone around them.
And their idea of progress isn't about inner growth, but about fighting, conquering.
Right. It's about overcoming obstacles, changing the external world, changing other people. Hoff calls them the bulldozer Backsin or the bigoted Backsin, always trying to fix everything out there instead of looking within.
And there's that interesting paradox about society valuing youthfulness.
But promoting lifestyles so stressful, they actually destroy youthfulness prematurely, then trying to patch it up with cosmetics or surgery. It's a very busy Backsin approach.
The critique of saving time really hits home, too. That contrast between the rushed, impersonal hamburger stand
You don't count, hurry up.
versus the calm, welcoming Chinese tea house.
You're important. Relax and enjoy yourself. It makes you think about how, despite all our supposed time-saving devices, everyone feels like they have less time than ever.
Thoreau saw it way back then, didn't he?
Yeah.
Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? Taking 1,000 stitches today just to save 9 tomorrow. It feels like we're always preparing to live, but never actually living.
And this frantic pace is the complete opposite of the Taoist ideal of longevity achieved through inner harmony and quiet. Hoff mentions figures like Lee Chum-yun, who supposedly lived incredibly long by cultivating peace, not by rushing.
So what's the antidote to being a busy Baxen?
It comes back to Pooh. Remember what he likes doing best. It's not actually eating the honey, it's that moment just before he eats it. The anticipation, the presence in the moment.
Enjoying the process, not just obsessing about the goal.
Exactly. Hoff argues that the goals are important mainly because they get us into the process. But the real secret, the thing that defeats the myths of the great rewards somewhere else and the frantic need for saving time, is finding enjoyment in the process itself.
Pooh finds joy just being with his friends, or looking forward to a simple treat, or listening to birds sing.
Right. When you're actually engaged with and appreciating what's around you right now, you literally don't have time to be a busy Baxen. Because being a Baxen, Hoff says, is ultimately a tremendous waste of time. That Lu Yu poem captures it. Life is flowing, why not relax and celebrate it now?
This focus on appreciating the now and who you are ties right into the next idea, being that sort of bear, recognizing that everyone is special.
It does. It's about understanding your own inherent value and the importance of just, well, enjoying your life as you are.
Piglet's story is a good starting point here. He feels useless because he's a very small animal.
Right. But Rabbit points out that his smallness is precisely what makes him essential for the plan to capture Kanga, or rather swap Roo. His perceived weakness is actually his unique strength in that context.
And even Pooh has a moment of feeling not very useful.
Until Rabbit makes it clear that the whole adventure would be impossible without me. And Pooh gets that quiet feeling of pride. He recognizes his own importance just for being himself. Impossible without me. That sort of bear.
It reminds me of that Chinese story, The Stonecutter.
Oh, that's a powerful one. The stonecutter is dissatisfied, right? He wishes he were more powerful, like a rich merchant, then a high official, then the sun, then a cloud that blocks the sun, then a rock that resists the cloud, then a mountain.
But each one has a weakness, something that affects it.
Exactly. He finally realizes that the only thing that can affect the mountain is a stonecutter chipping away at it. So he goes back to being himself. He became the stonecutter again, and he was a more powerful stonecutter than he had ever been before, because he finally accepted and embraced his own nature and power.
So the lesson is about believing in the power we already have.
Yeah.
Using who we are instead of wishing we were someone else or just waiting for fate.
That's the core of it. Hoff gives those examples. Buckminster Fuller, facing absolute disaster, realized he had nothing left to lose and was free to follow his ideas, working with natural laws, and achieved incredible things.
And Thomas Edison, kicked out of school basically, but had this inner belief and plan to understand nature's laws through relentless experimentation, became hugely successful by being intensely himself.
They weren't trying to fit a mold, they were using their unique gifts. It's the total opposite of the play-it-safe pessimists like Eeyore.
Eeyore accomplishes so little because he doesn't really believe anything good can happen, or that he can make it happen. That half-hearted attempt to save Roo's tail after Roo was already safe. It's
effort without belief, without timely action. But challenges, the book suggests, can actually bring out strengths we didn't know we possessed.
Like Piglet during the storm when Owl's house blew down, he found he had more courage than he thought.
Absolutely. His escape, his journey through the flood to get help, partly motivated by Pooh's validating poem calling him "O Gallant Piglet," shows that tiddly-palm principle.
The more it snows, the more it goes. Meaning,
respect builds respect. When someone shows belief in you, like Pooh did for Piglet, it can inspire you to find bravery you didn't know you had. Positive energy builds on itself.
And Piglet doing that noble thing, giving his house to Owl, that was made easier because Pooh immediately offered him a place to stay.
Right, he'd come and live with me. It shows generosity and courage often flourish within a supportive community, not just in isolation.
So the bottom line here is that happiness isn't about getting somewhere else or becoming someone else. It's about appreciating who you are right now.
Exactly. Misery comes from discontent, from constantly comparing. But wisdom, happiness, courage, they aren't destinations. They're part of a cycle that starts whenever you decide to embrace who you are and what you have. As Chuangzi suggested, Taking care of your own spirit first is how you become capable of caring for bigger things.
So anyone can find happiness and importance, can use who they are, and avoid that quiet desperation Thoreau mentioned, just by being that sort of bear.
Which leads us to the final, maybe most mysterious-sounding concept, going nowhere to do nothing.
Right, that conversation between Christopher Robin and Pooh. It sounds like just being lazy, but Hoff gives it real significance.
He connects it to another Chuang-Tzu story. Consciousness is searching for the Tao, asks various figures, gets complicated answers, but it's the mythical Yellow Emperor who finally says, the way to understand, find peace, and reach the Tao involves
no thought and put forth no effort, go nowhere and do nothing, and start from no point and follow no road. Sounds pretty paradoxical.
It does, but it points to the Taoist idea that often nothing is something, while all the busy something we fill our lives with might actually be nothing at all in the grand scheme. This is related to Tai Tzu, the great nothing or the great void, but not as emptiness in a negative sense, more like pure potential, openness.
Like the other Yellow Emperor story where he loses the Pearl of Tao.
Exactly. Knowledge tries to find it, fails. Distant vision tries, fails. Eloquence tries, fails. Who finds it?
Empty mind.
Empty mind. Because an empty sort of mind isn't cluttered. It's clear. It can actually see what's right there in front of it. Like Pooh finding Eir's lost tail being used as a bell pull on Owl's door. He wasn't looking for a tail. He just noticed what was there.
An overstuffed mind is too busy with its own internal chatter.
Right. A clear mind listens to a bird singing. It experiences the moment. A stuffed full mind hears the bird and immediately starts classifying. What species is that? Is it migrating? It misses the actual song because it's too busy analyzing.
And we often seem afraid of that emptiness, don't we? We equate it with loneliness.
We do. Hoff points out how we fill every gap appointment books pack, radio's always on, constant scrolling anything to avoid just being with ourselves in the quiet. But he argues that truthfulness isn't found by adding more stuff to the big congested mess in our heads. It's found by discarding the clutter, by clearing things out, and discovering the surprising fullness of nothing.
That anecdote about Emperor Hirohito enjoying an empty slot in his schedule.
It shows the value of just having space, unscheduled time, room to breathe, to just be. It comes back to subtraction. Lao Tse again. To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day.
And Chuang-Tzu student Yan Hui making progress by forgetting rules and rituals, shedding the non-essential.
It all points toward this idea that the highest stage of development isn't accumulating the most information, but returning to a state like that of an independent, clear-minded, all-seeing child.
Not childish, but childlike.
Exactly. The truly wise are like children who know. Their minds aren't small, they're empty of petty conditional learning, which makes them open and receptive to the big, simple, profound wisdom of the great nothing.
And this connects to Galleon's Lap, the enchanted place at the end of the Pooh books.
It does. How do you get there? You take the path to nothing and go nowhere until you reach it. Because ultimately, it's not a physical place you travel to. It's right where you are, always accessible. If your mind is clear, if you're present, if you're, as Hoff puts it, friendly with bears.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. Hoff's core argument in the Tao of Pooh seems to be a real challenge to how many of us think about wisdom and success.
It really is. He's saying true wisdom, true contentment, real effectiveness, they don't come from piling up more brain power, more abstract knowledge, or more frantic cleverness. In fact, those things can often separate us from reality, tangle us up, and even cause harm.
Instead, wisdom comes from valuing presence, from working with the natural flow of things, like wu-wei.
And from understanding and embracing our own unique inner nature, the Coddleston Pie principle, and finding that clarity and richness and stillness in the great nothing, rather than in constant restless busyness.
So what we're often desperately searching for out there, somewhere else, isn't found by adding more or trying harder in the same old ways.
No, it requires a shift in perspective, looking in the right place, which is often within ourselves in the present moment, finding value in simplicity in the uncarved block state.
Hoff wraps it up so well with that final song from Pooh, doesn't he? It feels like a summary of the whole way.
It really does. To know the way, we go the way, we do the way we do, the things we do, it goes on. But the key part is, but when you do the things that you can do, you will find the way, and the way will follow you.
And Pooh's simple comment right after it's the same thing, that just crystallizes it?
Exactly. Knowing the way is doing the way. Living these principles, embodying them in your simple everyday actions according to your true nature, that is the path. You don't find the way as some separate goal. The way finds you when you're living authentically.
It's really quite profound how Hoff uses this familiar, comforting world of Winnie the Pooh to make these ancient Taoist ideas feel so accessible and charming and often really funny, too.
It's a masterful blend. It takes these concepts that could seem abstract or difficult and grounds them in characters and situations we understand intuitively.
It definitely makes you rethink things. What it means to be smart or busy or special or even just, content. We really only scratched the surface here today.
Oh, absolutely. This is the kind of book where the more you sit with it, the more layers you find. It definitely rewards taking the time to explore it yourself.
So if this deep dive has sparked your interest, we really encourage you to discover more of this unique wisdom. You can grab a copy of The Tao of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff using the link provided in the description.
And of course, please subscribe to Books and Bytes for more deep dives into fascinating books and ideas like this one.
So maybe as you go out the rest of your day, you could try taking just a moment, pause like Pooh on his log or his rock, and just ask yourself, is there some simple, obvious thing you can do right now based on who you are and what's really here that might just be the way you've been looking for?